Despite the difficulties and inconveniences that we are all going through due to the current health situation, we are gathered today with a great spirit because we understand that it is more important to remain positive and continue with our journey. The student community, the Licenciatura en Enseñanza del Inglés, recognize the efforts of our coordinator, Dr. Edgar Emanuel Garcia Ponce, for organizing this seminar. We also thank Global Chamber. Especially, we give thanks to Maestro Arturo Samarripa and Maestra Indira Jeffrey for supporting and organizing this event. It is a pleasure for the students and the teachers to be able to receive the guests who accompany us today and who will share their valuable knowledge. The organizers invite all the participants to keep your cameras on, but your microphones off throughout this event. Thank you for your understanding. To properly begin this seminar, Dr. Iracema Mora Pablo, one of our professors, will give us some opening words.
Buenas tardes a todos. Me permito saludar al coordinador de la Licenciatura en Enseñanza del Inglés, al doctor Edgar Emanuel García Ponce, y a nuestras dos invitadas en esta nueva edición del Seminario Transdisciplinario de la Lengua, la doctora Nora Basurto de la Universidad Veracruzana y la doctora Pauline Moore de la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de México. Este seminario se realiza cada semestre desde hace más de 10 años y es un trabajo que nace del Cuerpo Académico de Lingüística Aplicada a la Enseñanza del Inglés, pensando en ustedes, los alumnos, y de qué manera podemos acercarlos a otras propuestas, otras investigaciones y contextos con invitados nacionales e internacionales y por supuesto con la participación de otros profesores del programa de la Licenciatura en Enseñanza del Inglés. El propósito de este seminario es abrir oportunidades a los alumnos de la licenciatura para que puedan interactuar de una manera más cercana con los ponentes, donde pueden traer a discusión sus propias investigaciones, sus conocimientos adquiridos en las clases de este programa y vean cómo esos conceptos que ven en clase se usan en el día a día del quehacer del profesor de inglés. Me gustaría agradecer a nuestros invitados, Pauline y Nora. Hemos trabajado con ellas desde hace años y también siempre nos apoyan en estos proyectos que tenemos para ustedes. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Nora, my former teacher and a friend, a colleague, a role model. You have been here with us in many occasions. We have worked together in other projects and hope we can keep collaborating in this program and in the MA as well. Pauline, thank you for accepting our invitation, for your support in our estancias with the students in the MA and now collaborating with us here in the DA. We are sure our students will benefit from your feedback and experience. I would like to thank Emmanuel for this organization of the event. And students, please feel free to ask as many questions as you can to our guest speakers, and we hope you enjoy the event. I also thank the BA teachers who are here with us in this seminario. Thank you very much for being here, and welcome everybody, and hope you enjoy the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iracema. Now I have the honor to present Dr. Nora M. Basurto Santos. Please allow me to read a sketch of her vast curriculum. Dr. Nora M. Basurto Santos holds a PhD in Applied Linguistics in English language, teaching from the University of Warwick, United Kingdom. She did a postdoctoral stay at the University of Edinburgh, founded by the National Council of Science and Technology, CONACYT, from 2018 to 2019. She has worked as a professor and researcher at the University of Veracruz for over 35 years. She teaches in the undergraduate and postgraduate programs at the language school. She designed and was founding member of the master program in teaching English as a foreign language and the PhD program in language studies and applied linguistics. She also designed and launched a diploma for teaching Spanish as a foreign language for the School for Foreign Students. She has been a teacher educator for 20 years She is a member of scientific committees and editorial boards of international indexed journals. She has been distinguished by the CONACYT as a member of the National System of Researchers. Today, Dr. Nora M. Basurto Santos will share with us the topic, Teaching EFL During COVID-19, Teachers' Emotions. Welcome, Dr. Nora. You may start.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'd like to start by saying thank you, a big thank you to Emmanuel, who invited me to be with you this afternoon. And also, as Dr. Iracema Mora mentioned, I am a regular person participating in your events, which I really appreciate. So I'm going to start because I understand that I have only 40 minutes. And then I don't know if after my talk, the students can ask questions, or after my talk, Dr. Pauline Moore's talk is coming. So you just let me know when the students' questions would be, after my talk or after the two talks. Okay.
It's going to be after your talks. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, thank you very much. Thanks for the clarification. Okay, so I have asked Emmanuel to help me with the PowerPoint, because I have so many new digital platforms in my computer, so I get confused, and I don't want to ruin the short time that I have to talk about a piece of research that I'm still in the process of conducting. So if you go to next, please, Emmanuel. And this is what I'll be doing this afternoon. And this is the outline. So I'll provide a little bit of background information about the teachers in Mexico. As I have already said, this is still ongoing study. I'm in the process, which is taking longer than expected, of conducting the interviews. I'll talk very briefly about the methodology, research methodology, because I gathered that that's what you study. That's part of your program in the Licenciatura in EFL. So also a little bit about the process of how I collected the data and the participants, and I'll finish by presenting some results and conclusions. Next, please. So the title of this talk is Teaching EFL During COVID-19 in Mexico. And as particularly today, I'll be presenting the part that emerged from the analysis of the data that deals with the emotions of the teachers during this unexpected situation, unexpected by everybody, by students, by teachers, and parents, government, etc. So the main question guiding my study was, how are you teaching? Very general question, how are you teaching your EFL lessons during the COVID-19 time? And then I had some sub questions. If we go to the other, I wanted to find out how teachers felt, and if they felt prepared to teach under these circumstances, under these situations, and if so, why, and if not, also why they didn't feel they were prepared to face this situation. Also, another question was if they felt that the educational authorities, in this case, my study most of the time deals with public education, but in this case, I have most of my participants come from the public sector, but I also have some participants from the private sector, the minority. So if they felt that the educational authorities had provided them with teaching support before this situation happened, such as professional development courses, the use of technology inside and outside the classroom, to teach the way they now have to do it during this COVID-19 time, and how they felt they had been supported. Okay, so next. Now, the research methodology that I'm using it for this particular study is mixed method. I have quantitative data as well as qualitative data. In this particular afternoon, I'll be presenting only qualitative data because I'll be talking about data, the teachers' emotions and what they said, their actual words. But I also have, and I have presented in other events, I have presented some other findings concerning that include quantitative data, but this time I'll be presenting only the qualitative data. Now, I designed a questionnaire, Google Forms. It comprised 14 questions. Some of them were, they targeted personal information such as names, the age of the teachers, where in the country they were teaching. I asked them for the email in case they wanted to continue participating with being interviewed by me. Also, some of the questions had to do with work, how long they had been working, what level of education they were teaching. And this was important for me because, as you may know, and I'm sure you know, most of Mexicans are in basic education in the public sector. The students in school age are in basic education, meaning perhaps kindergarten, primary school, secondary school, and preparatory school. And so I wanted to know if most of my participants came from this sector where there are very different situations, such as number of students, the conditions, etc., etc. Teachers who have worked at universities in Mexico, we know that we have certain privileges that teachers at schools don't have. So that was something that I had in mind when I was asking these questions. And also, in very general terms, I wanted to know from and listen to the voices how they were feeling with this situation, their thoughts about teaching and learning online, how they felt about having to use, it was not a choice. They had to, as we are now, as the presenter said, we want to keep on working, even though be optimistic. And that's why we are, thanks to technology, we are today with our work. But that was not, we have to admit that was very unusual. And also I wanted to find out about the challenges they were facing and how, if they could overcome them or not, and what the consequences of these challenges were for them, or what they represented to them. And also, I am in the process of collecting more data through interviews, semi-structured interviews, and also it's been a challenge for me because I have to record, I have to arrange. Teachers, as we'll see later on, teachers are overworked, they are overwhelmed with lots of work. Okay, so next, please. Okay, so first of all, why emotions? So if maybe some of you, I have done some research on emotions together with colleagues. That's not my main area of research. I've been involved with other colleagues who have done a lot of research on emotions, and some of them are from Brazil, some of them are from Guanajuato, and some of them are from the Universidad Veracruzana. So I won't go into a literature review, because if you look at the link that I have at the top of the slide, you just go to Google Scholar Google and just write research on emotions, and you're going to get lots of research, books, chapters, articles from many parts of the world, especially from the UK, the USA, Australia. But I realized that emotions is becoming more and more research, an area more researched by Mexican researchers. And some of the leading researchers, I try to include people who are doing research. For example, Ana Maria Barcelos, she's been researching feelings, beliefs, emotions for, that's her main area of research. And she's a leading figure, and she's from Brazil. And that's what I'm including her, not only because of her studies are really interesting and very, very solid, but because she has done research most of the time, almost all the time, in Brazil, which is a context similar to ours in Mexico. So as you can see, it's very recent, 2015, and then only 2 years ago, Barcelos and Rutoy Lith, and also Kawi is Paula Golombek in the USA. She's done also research in emotions. And closer to us, we have Marisa Mendez Lopez, who's now working for the University of Veracruz. She used to work for the University of Quintana Roo in Chetumal, and she's done a lot of research on emotions, especially on students' emotions and feelings. Some researchers use emotions and feelings interchangeably. That's the way I'm using also. There are some researchers who separate feelings from emotions, from thoughts, from reactions, from moods. But in this case, I'm talking about emotions as the same way feelings. Now, why is it important to see and to research, to focus some of our studies on emotions, either teachers' emotions or students' emotions? And for this, I'm going to quote Ana Maria Barcelos. And according to Barcelos, the inseparability of cognition and emotion has been recognized in diverse fields such as neuropsychology, education, and applied linguistics. So both teachers and learners are there in the language classroom or now in video rooms, not only intellectually, but with all their emotions and all their feelings. Therefore, these emotions play a crucial role during every single act of teaching and learning. We cannot overlook this inseparability if we are to better understand what is going on or not during the teaching and learning process. Barcelo further highlights that, and I open inverted commas, there is a need to better understand the affective dimension of teacher and learner cognition. More specifically, it is important to understand how emotions interact to shape what teachers do, their implications for the learning, and how teacher emotions are part of teachers' practical knowledge and pedagogical content knowledge. And learners' emotions are related to their beliefs, and end of quote. So it's becoming more and more important, and it's becoming the focus of a lot of studies, because we cannot think of the students or the teachers for this particular occasion as intellectual people only, or academics, or people who are interested in the academic part of lessons. We are people, teachers and learners, who come into the classroom, who come into a chat room, a video room, not only thinking of what I'm going to teach today, what I'll be teaching today, my students should respond this or that, but whether we like it or not, we bring with us our emotions and our feelings. And these play a very, very important part to how we respond to what is going on in our processes of teaching and learning. Okay, so now about the participants. If we go to the participants, as I have already said, I designed a questionnaire, and then I used Google Forms, and I got a really, really good response, which I really appreciate, and I thank all the teachers who participated, because if you look at the map, all the states in blue, at least I've got one participant from that state. So it's I got 193 responses, and only about 7 states I haven't got any responses. Maybe later I'll have participants from Sonora, Zacatecas, Aguascalientes, Nayarit, but that's the sample is very representative, as it covers most of the country. Now about the participants, who my participants are, or where still are. If we go to next, please. These teachers who participated are, the age range goes from 22 to 60 years old. Most of them between the late 20s, 25 to 29, and also late 40s, like 45 to 49. And also regarding the how experienced they were, I had participants who have been in the profession for 1 year, and participants who've been for a long time. They've been in the profession for over 30 years. Now, going back to why I'm interested in researching public education, is because the conditions, I have already said, is very different from the realities teachers have to face in public or institutes. For example, most teachers who participated in my study have groups of between 20 and over 50 students per group. And some teachers have 6 groups of more than 20 students, and this, which means that they have to work with for 120 students per week, which is a really, really considerable number of students. It's a lot of work. So next, please. Now, just a little bit about the participants. Is they most of them, 61 or more percent, are working in basic education, primary. For example, we can look at 39% are in preschool or elementary school, 14% in junior high school, which is secundaria. University, 26%. This means that they teach some of them teach in primary, but at the same time, they're teaching at university level, perhaps in those courses where students from other degrees come and learn English. So multi-level is only 13% of teachers who work in different levels of education. Okay, so next, please. Now, as I said, I wanted to, I think, not all, it's becoming more and more common for researchers in our area, in applied linguistics, in foreign language teaching and learning, to go to the people and listen to their voices. So I'm presenting this very, very short, just 4 sentences of what teachers said, because from here we can start looking at their emotions and how they have been feeling, even though we're going to see later on that their feelings are like in a roller coaster. Sometimes they feel positive, sometimes they feel very pessimistic, etc. But for example, something that I have to mention is that all the names, as you may know, are pseudonyms. They're not the real names. But Laura, for example, she said that for her to be teaching during this pandemic time is being challenging, but not impossible. And she said also that for her, using digital media has been, not for her, but she has realized that it's been problematic because teachers didn't have the necessary training to be delivering their classes online. Carlos, for example, mentioned that a situation that he found surprising is that in theory, he thought he would be dealing with digital natives as people who were born with already mobile phones and computers, etc. They are called digital natives. But most of the students have no idea of many basic things, such as how to create emails, send an email, or enter virtual classroom, use passwords, attach files, etc., etc. So even though we take for granted that because they're young, they are supposed to know everything about using computers, using mobiles, using chat rooms, platforms, but that has not been the case in Carlos' experience. Gloria mentioned that she had gone through different stages during the pandemic. She mentioned, for example, a stage of denial, stage of anger, negotiation stage, depression stage, and acceptance. So as we can see, it's like, it's not that they have only one emotion that they have been going through, they have been experiencing, but there is lots of emotions, and going from pessimistic to optimistic and backwards, etc. And Gabby mentioned that according to the experience, I started conducting this research about 2 months after we started with this situation up to now. And we thought it was going to be only 4 months, and it's been 8 months, and we're still confined and locked down. So she said that is, according to her, is now much more practical because she thinks she has more resources with which she can help her students practice, and they can receive it immediately. However, if that's why I have highlighted it in red. Face-to-face interactions, she said, is what I longed for the most. So this shows that she is she's willing to adapt, she's flexible to adapt, but she recognizes that she would prefer to be in the classroom, face-to-face. Okay, so if we look at, for example, the words that I have highlighted in red: problematic, lack of training, digital natives, denial, anger, negotiation, depression, acceptance, face-to-face interaction, and this longing for this mode of the teaching process, it's full of emotions, and of course, all these emotions, feelings, necessarily have an effect on what we do and how we feel about what we are doing every day with our students. Okay, next, now let's go to the findings. When I was looking at the data, especially the open-ended questions where teachers took the opportunity to express themselves more freely, words such as nostalgia, uncertainty, anger, stress, frustration, concern, worry, tiredness, confusion, isolation, insecurity, happiness, commitment, comfortable, empathy, challenge, overwhelmed, doubt, satisfaction. They were appearing all the time. Not only these are only just a few that because of the time that we have available today. But if Emmanuel helped me to show a PDF where at the beginning I organized this data, it can give you an idea. Can we show the PDF? Okay, for example, if we go just nostalgia, estrés, nostalgia, sorry, the questions were in Spanish. Frustrado, impotente, estresado, cómodo y con sentimientos encontrados, estresada, preocupada, frustrada, alegría, frustración, cansancio. Frustrated was very, very common to find. Tranquilo, mucho estrés, extrañando el aula, number 18. Estrés, frustración, tristeza, preocupada porque hay alumnos que necesitan, etcétera. Estrés, again, frustration, incomodidad, muchas molestias, emoción, decepción, desesperación. So these are really, if you just go, just to show very quickly, all that they were expressing lots of emotions. Most of them, I must say, unfortunately, they were negative. Negative. But there were also some optimistic, some like not 100% optimistic or positive, but I could see that some teachers were trying and they were really willing to find something good and to take something good out of this situation so that they could feel better when they are teaching, and also to help their students feel better, because they mentioned it's not only the teachers who are feeling and are going through this roller coaster of emotions, but our students are also going through these negative emotions. So we are human beings, either you are a teacher or student, and all, as I said at the beginning, we come into the process of teaching and learning, into the classroom, into the computer, the chat room, the video conference, with the emotions and with the feelings. We cannot separate them and say, I'm going to leave all my emotions outside the classroom or before I start my class. I'll forget about that. Sometimes we try, but it's impossible, as the quote from Ana Maria Barcelos mentioned. Okay, so as you can see, it's full, estresada, decepcionada, triste, angustiada, pensativa, esperanzada. Some of them just said like 191, impotente, just one word. And with that word there's nothing I can do. Whereas there are other participants who really explain how they felt and why they thought they were feeling the way they were feeling. Okay, next. This is just to give you an idea of all the data that I'm still in the process of putting together with the data I'm gathering from interviews or through the interviews. So now, if we go to the next, teachers' emotions, Now, how they expressed, or some of them expressed they were worried. For example, Patricia said that she was worried, and I think we have gone through this. It's slide number 13, please. She felt worried because she was aware that not all her students had access to internet. Also, she found the group management was more difficult, and she was counting on the parents' support, which she didn't find. She said that there was very little support from parents, and that's understandable. We know that most parents do not speak English, or they didn't learn English in the public sector. So how can they help their students? And as the teachers cannot help immediately their students, all their students, they were counting on the parents being able to help them, but that has not been the case. Now, some of them also mentioned they felt overwhelmed. And a good example of this is what Mario said. He said that he teaches English to 6 groups using a platform that I consider is not appropriate to deliver his classes. And he has explained to me during the interview that even though he wanted to use other platforms, the only possible platform, so to speak, was Facebook, because that was most of his students had access to. Not all the students, but most of them had a Facebook account. They didn't have access to Zoom, for example, or didn't have access to, or didn't know how to use Meet, or all the platforms that we have been learning to use. Beatriz, on the other hand, she said she felt tired and she felt challenged by the situation because the use of technology and the workload has been even more. So a lot of teachers, maybe these are the teachers who are not the young ones, but older. They are in the late 40s and 50s, 60s, like myself. And we have found really difficult to cope with all the platforms that we didn't know that. I knew, for example, about Zoom and another one, but all of a sudden, if I'm invited to participate in conferences, each organizer chooses which platform we have to use. And even though they might seem similar, there are striking differences. That's why I asked for help this time with the PowerPoint. Okay, so the use of technology. One thing is to choose, and a different thing is when you have to. The use of technology is not an option. You have to use it, whether you like it, whether you know how to use it or not. And in the process, you have to learn how to use it. You have to teach, they have to teach, and they have to be learning how to use technology. And also very, very, it emerged very, a lot of times, the workload. Lots of teachers, most of them, I may say over 90% of them, they were complaining about the workload. They feel they have to write reports more than before. Parents, I'm telling you this because I didn't have the time to put all I don't have time to put all the quotes, but they mentioned that parents are calling them all day long. They are complaining, they are asking for things, even more, much more than when they are in classroom, in schools. Okay, they also, Paola mentioned something that represents all the teachers who have felt isolated because of the lack of decision of the university, and in that particular case, her university, and the lack of clarity as to the measures that would be taken during this contingency. The professor had to start giving virtual classes to help for the sake of the students, and the university issued its official statement 3 weeks later. So at the beginning, there was a lot of uncertainty. They felt isolated. They were making their own decisions. They didn't know whether they were making the correct ones, but they had to start, even though the schools or the universities or the institutes didn't have, because nobody was expecting this to happen. So it's not that they are blaming the schools for not having a system in place. How could they know that we were going to go through this pandemic? But that's something that had an impact on them. They felt it's only me. It's me at home making decisions. I don't have my colleagues to discuss at least and say, what are you going to do? How, or what is working for you that I could adapt, etc. Now, also very, very commonly, something that appeared very commonly was this feeling of uncertainty. This teacher is a young teacher working in a very remote part of the state of Veracruz. And she was saying that designing and sending activities that I don't know whether they are working or if they are what my students need at this moment. So those teachers, and I was really surprised in the goods nicely, seeing all these young teachers trying to cope with the situation, even though they themselves, they didn't have the resources, and they knew their students didn't have access to internet, the students didn't have access to computers, let alone platforms. So they decided to design activities and take them to, they were living in one part of the state of Veracruz, and the students were living in a very remote part. So they designed the activities without knowing whether they were going to work, as she said, or not, but they were not leaving their students alone. They didn't disappear, so to speak, from students. They were imagining, they were creating, they were trying to do something, whatever was in their power, to continue teaching and continue being there for their students. Okay, next, please. Helpless. For example, Lucia, and this is something when she said that most dads or moms have not knowledge of the language and they can't help their children if they have some doubts. And I feel I can't do more to help them. So there was something, they were thinking of the students all the time, thinking of, we're going to see, I don't know if I have here, but in the PDF, we can't forget, we can't overlook the teachers. Some of them, or most of them, have their own families, their own children, their own partners, their own parents, sister, brothers. So they were concerned not only, they had to be dealing with their emotions towards the situation and their students, and also their own emotions towards their own families, themselves, health, economic situations, etc. On a positive note, also some participants mentioned that they felt committed to motivate their students so that they do not drop out. Also to serve as a teacher who provides certainty in times of vulnerability. Those have been complicated challenges in terms of technology and innovative pedagogical implementation. I have felt prepared. So some of them felt they were prepared technologically wise, but they felt also the obligation not only to know how to use the technology and to put that into practice to reach their students, but also how to motivate them. Because some students, as if you watch the news Every day there are students who are young students in primary schools, for example, or secondary school. They're dropping out because the lack of resources, or because the lack of motivation, the lack of help at home, etc. So these teachers, the participants, they were also aware of this. It's not only about learning to use the technology and deliver the class, but also how can I motivate my students so that they don't drop out of not only English lessons, but school altogether. And also teachers had, they have been going through lots of mixed feelings. Sometimes they feel optimistic, sometimes they feel that they are, like, as we say, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes they feel they go one step ahead and 3 steps backwards. So it's not, emotions are not stable. They are all the time changing, especially during this time. And that's why I think it's really important to do research on this topic, on these emotions, and see in the long run, how this is going to be affecting teachers and students, because I think that we're only just seeing the tip of the iceberg. Okay, so sorry about that. The conclusions. I'm sorry about that. And this is a long quote from Marisa Mendez, one Mexican researcher now working for the University of Veracruz. I mentioned at the beginning, she's done a lot of research on emotions, especially learners' emotions. But what I've been finding, I have been discovering and finding out, and by analyzing the data, goes with what she's found when she has researched students' emotions. And you have the quote there. And she says that language learning is a process full, repeat, with negative and positive emotions. Thus, appropriate management of students' emotions, in this case would be teachers' emotions, is necessary for language teachers to enable them to help their students make their emotions work for them and not against them. The importance of creating a positive classroom climate, in this case, how can we create a positive video class environment in which students feel and teachers feel secure and willing to take the risks inherent in learning a foreign language is a paramount skill teachers need to work on. Teachers need to develop strategies to make the learning environment a supportive one, respectful and positive human relations is not, in which students feel confident and willing to participate. I'm sorry, but I can't see very well. Establishing respectful and positive human relations is not an easy task, not only in the academic field, but in any aspect of human life. Thus, it is important for teachers to enforce effective techniques that can contribute to the establishment and maintenance of positive interpersonal relations in any instructional situation. So whatever this long quote by Mendez Lopez is relevant to my finding so far. I don't think by continuing listening. Okay, so it's valid for students, but it's also valid for teachers. And I like to show you, it's a little bit of, what about EFL teachers? After reading this conclusion that Mendez Lopez arrived at when she studied emotions in learners, what about EFL teachers and their emotions? And I like to show you two memes, maybe you already know them. Next, please. Because, for example, and this is also, we care about our students. As you see, teachers feel the obligation to motivate them, to help them to find ways. But we teachers also are expecting students to give something to make us feel, because we are also going through the same process they're going to, maybe in different ways, but all of us, teachers, learners, administrators, families, everybody is going through this. So sometimes with the interviews, I've been talking to some colleagues, and they complain that the students, and we realize that the students, they're not there. They turn on the video, they turn off the video and the microphone, and sometimes they're not there, and sometimes we have to be saying, are you there? And we also feel as isolated, and we also feel this is something that teachers and students have to help each other. And we have, as Marisa mentioned, that respect, the feeling of security, willing to take the risk, is a two-way street. It's not only something teachers should be doing, but our students should be cooperating and helping us to be better teachers in this new way that we have to teach you, and that we didn't. We are, some of us are learning to along the way. Okay, so thank you very much, and I'm ready for your questions. Yes, we got about 10 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Nora. And now we have time to ask some questions or make some comments about the presentation. Please use the little hand feature in this platform if you have a question.
Well, I don't have any question. I just wanted to thank you for everything that you are sharing with us, because you're right. It's pretty difficult for everyone right now, for us as teachers and also for students. And it's getting like a circle where sometimes we don't know how to manage.
Yes, thank you, Annabelle. And I think some of you are both. Some of you are studying, but also, I guess, some of you are working. So sometimes you're students, and sometimes you are teachers. And it's a lot to handle. Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you.
We have a question in the chat.
Yes.
What strategies would you recommend EFL teachers may use in the digital classroom to have a better rapport with students?
Strategies to teach better, strategies to make students motivated to learn in this way, or I'm going to speak based on my personal experience. I learned on my own how to use technology. I've never taken any courses on how to use technology because I had to. When I started the master, that was many, many years ago. Can you imagine? We used electric typewriters. So can you imagine? So it was more difficult. So I've been learning how to use technology because I need it along the way. The strategy is to try to, it's easier said than done, to try to stay calm, to learn a little bit every day. We need to devote, 20 minutes a day to learn something new about what we need. If I recognize that I'm not very good at using technology, then I'll be taking 20 minutes, half an hour using technology. Or if I'm, for example, I know how to use technology, but I don't know how can I motivate my students to to stay, because for example, in my case, I've noticed I'm teaching now research for the final paper in the BA in English language. And I realized that my group is, there are 16 students, and most of the time, every day, I have 6 students who are there. As I have told them, I don't know who you are because I can see un futbolista, a footballer, I see somebody there. So they know me, but I don't know them. And it's, sometimes now I've been sending them, we have a WhatsApp group, we have a Facebook group, and we are using Meet, no Meet, the other one. Yes, I think
Teams?
Meet.
Teams?
Teams. No, sorry. Teams, I find it difficult. We're using Meet.
Google Meet.
And yes, exactly. I think that's easier. That turned out to be easier for me. But I tried now to send them. I'm not pushing them to. I feel that I should be telling them, turn on your cameras, please, or your microphone. But I think they are adults now, and it's up to them. But the strategy, I think, is to create as long as possible a rapport and let your students know how you're feeling, and let them speak out how they're feeling. So I think that's so far what I've noticed in this new mode. I try to be friendly. I try to understand them. I sometimes, because the class is from 8 to 10, I know that maybe they turn on the platform and they turn off the microphone and the video camera and they go to bed, like the meme, for example. And I'm not taking that into account. I'm not calling the roll. I never do, in fact, not even in classrooms. But yes, I think all of us need a lot of support, and that whatever strategy you use to help them and ask them to help you to make this process better process, easier process for both teachers and learners, and be honest with them. If you don't know how to use something, maybe they can help you. Ask them how they feel, ask them if there's something you can do about them, not only about their academic side, but also maybe some of them can talk to you about problems they have not in front of the class. That's the only, well, the kind of strategies they have to do with being a person and who understand and try, at least a person who tries to understand the students and be honest with the students, and also let them know how you're feeling as a teacher. If you're feeling that you are there wasting, so to speak, your time because they're not paying attention, you don't know whether they are really paying attention or not. But I think we can establish rapport and we can establish respect on both sides, teachers to students for teachers.
Well, thank you everyone for your questions.
Thank
Due
you.
to time constraints, we need to move on. And now, la División de Ciencias Sociales y Humanidades proudly grants a constancia to Dr. Nora M. Basurto Santos. Let me just share my screen here. I hope that everybody can see it. La División de Ciencias Sociales y Humanidades Campus Guanajuato otorga la presente constancia a la doctora Nora M. Basurto Santos, Universidad Veracruzana, por haber presentado la ponencia plenaria Teaching EFL During COVID-19 Teachers Emotions en el marco del 26º Seminario Transdisciplinario de la Lengua, impartida el 30 de octubre del 2020. Doctor Miguel Ángel Hernández Fuentes, director de la División de Ciencias Sociales y Humanidades, Campus Guanajuato.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Dr. Emanuel Garcia Ponce again, to Dr. Iracema Mora, and to the University of Guanajuato for this opportunity. Thank you very much to the presenter. also.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you very much. And just as a small note, there was a problem with the form because the email was not included. So I would need you to register again, please, and include the email. All right? Thank you.
Okay, continuing with our program, our next presenter will be Dr. Pauline Marion Dorothy Moore. Before she starts her presentation, I will read a summary of her extensive curriculum. Pauline Moore holds a master's in applied linguistics and a PhD in linguistics from la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. She is a full-time professor at the Facultad de Lenguas en la Universidad Autónoma del Estado de México, where she has worked since September 1993 and teaches semantics, pragmatics, and teacher training at undergraduate and graduate level. She is currently the head of the Postgraduate Studies Department in the faculty. She is a member of the Mexican Association for Applied Linguistics and the research networks, Red de Cuerpos Académicos en Investigación Educativa, and Red de Cuerpos Académicos en Lengua Extranjera. She belongs to the research group Studies in Linguistics and Teaching at her faculty. Her areas of research interest are academic literacy and professional identity in the field of second language teaching. She has published academic book chapters and articles in prestigious national and international journals. In this occasion, Dr. Pauline will talk about what does it mean to be an ELT professional today. Welcome, Dr. Pauline. You may start, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Jose Luis. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
marvelous. Right, well, I'm just about to scare the life out of myself because I'm going to try and share my screen in Zoom, which is something that I actually don't usually do because we use Teams in the Faculty of Languages. And so I'm hoping that this is going to work okay. And once I've done that, is that okay for everyone? Can you all see, can you see my title slide?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
So, brilliant, right, great. I'm really glad to be here. And thank you very, very much, Edgar Emanuel, for the invitation. And thank you, Jose Luis, for your kind presentation there. And so when Edgar Emanuel was kind enough to invite me for today, I was thinking about what I would like to talk about. And I mean, I do a lot of research especially into professional identity. Recently has been much more my area of interest. And it is the professional identity of ELT teachers that I am specifically interested in. Okay. And I am also totally fascinated by how much our lives and our sense of self has changed through lockdown and remote learning. And I also wanted, at the same time as I want to reflect on what we've been going through, I wanted to help my fellow teachers to reflect on how these enormous changes in our lives has affected us for better or for worse. It's always been clear to me that identity and sense of self is dynamic and very open to change. But I really don't think we've ever lived through such an immediate and far-reaching impact in our conditions of living and working as what's happened since February, March 2020. And frankly, for me, it's been shocking. I don't know about you lot. So we were quite literally taken out of our typical working and living conditions and dumped unceremoniously and with no training into conditions which were vastly different, in some cases completely precarious. Precarious not only in the sense of perhaps our inability with educational technology, but also perhaps people were dropped into home situations which were not as safe as we might like them to have been. And I think that this is a very serious point, and it's something we all need to think about very, very, very seriously when we're teaching and taking classes. So every single aspect of our lives as human beings has changed beyond all recognition. and I don't pretend to understand or account for everything that has been happening. However, I do hope that by sharing the stories that I'm going to share today, and by comparing them with what had happened in the past, we might start to make some sense out of what is happening. This too, what we're living through at the moment, it will pass. And when it does, it'll be worth retaining what we learned about ourselves as teachers, about our relationship with students, our relationship with administrators and the world, and what we learned about ourselves and as people as well, in order to feel that all of this that we've been going through was actually eventually worth something. Okay, so I just want to move on. So this is the structure of the talk, and I want to start out by saying, why bother to research at all into teacher identity? Then why use stories to research this topic? I do use narrative inquiry as my primary means of research, and though that has become a little more difficult under the conditions we're living in at the moment. And I just want to set this up as it's kind of a then versus now focus in this talk, because I did a lot of research into teacher identity initially in 2017, and what I'll be doing is trying to compare what I did in 2017 with what I'm doing now in 2020. Obviously, it's not that easy to compare, and there are many things that have changed. But I want to think about these, and I want to think about these in three large categories of experience, where we're thinking about the people who are important, who are significant in our stories, the places that are significant in our stories, and the experiences that are significant. And then I want to reach some final conclusions and questions, and hopefully I will keep to time. Classically, I talk far too much. I'm from Ireland, so that's what we do. So why research teacher identity? It's very important for us to look at our professional practice here in Mexico in its own terms, without the filter of what's appropriate in the US or what's appropriate in Great Britain. And that's probably ironic coming from me, because I mean, I'm clearly British, but I will live and work in Mexico. And I think that our experience as teachers in Mexico is just as important in its own right as the experience of any teachers anywhere. And I feel that our voices need to be heard. And I feel that by doing this, we can try to decolonialize the focus that we have in English language teaching, to move it away from this, this is something that we do because we are into the States or into Great Britain. And to transcend in that sense, then, this distinction and the problem, the controversy that we have between who is a native speaker and who's a non-native speaker, and what's good and what's bad, and all of that kind of silly nonsense that I don't think is helpful on any level. And find answers to our problems, the problems that are very specifically Mexican. I want to look at how our current situation is changing our sense of self as ELT practitioners. And in order to do that, for me, it's essential to think about teacher identity and the ways in which teacher identity is changing today. And I'm basically going to do this through the use of stories. And why would this be important? Barkhusen and Hacker in 2009 said that through constructing, sharing, analyzing, and interpreting their teaching stories, teachers get the opportunity to reflect on their own practice and to articulate their interpretations of this practice. Not losing sight of the fact that identity is not a fixed entity, but it is a cultural and a political process. And by that, what I mean is that my identity responds to questions in my culture, and it responds to issues in my political milieu. We have to always take that into consideration. Identity is holistic, it's situated, it depends on the situation that we're living through, and it is dynamic, it is in constant change. And that is part of what is very interestingly creating situations for us today, because it is situated, and I notice behind me, right? I think we've all already been in lots of video conferences with teachers, lots of video conferences with other researchers and things like that, and mostly they have their nice background like Nora has with stacks of books and stuff like that. All my stacks of books are in the faculty, and I have not had either the time or the inclination to bring them home. And so what I've got behind me is kind of it's a it's a bit of a collage of Ireland and Irishness. So, you know, I mean, and this is the way in which then, rather than teaching, if I'm teaching in the faculty with all the books behind me, then I'm possibly come across in a different way than if I'm teaching here in my games room at home with kind of social life behind me. Okay, so that's kind of where I want to go with this, the idea of how our stories are changing and how our experience simply of teaching and taking classes is changing drastically throughout all of this. Now, when I talk about then and now, I just want to be as clear as I possibly can about this. And so when I'm talking about then and now, what I'm talking about is a research project which we started in 2017, which we did through a symposium for teachers of foreign languages who were all students, ex-students of our faculty. And this was for our 25-year anniversary. And people came back and we did kind of roundtable type discussions, and we recorded those. And then we followed up on some of those recordings. And what we ended up with was quite a lot of narrative data. And that narrative data we put together into a book called Dimensiones Humanistas en la Construcción Narrativa de la Identidad del Docente de Segundas Lenguas. Now, and then today, what I've done to try to find out what's going on in 2020 or in 2020, what I'm interested in is we couldn't do another symposium. We almost didn't do the symposium in 2017, by the way, because that happened just after the original date that we had, first of all, for this was the date when the earthquake happened, and so we had to cancel. And then, so I mean, it's disaster after disaster, isn't it?
Sorry.
Okay. Right. Now, and in the questionnaire, then what I did today in 2020, because I couldn't do a full symposium, what I did was a questionnaire, and this questionnaire is on Microsoft Teams, and it's called Teaching English in Trying Times, and it was an invitation to the teachers, the English teachers, only in the Faculty of Languages, to reflect on what they have been living through. And that questionnaire has 28 different questions divided into 8 different sections. And at the moment, I have 6 different sections. A section for personal data, a section talking about feelings, a section talking about experiences, talking about places, talking about the future, and then a closing section where I asked them for some final comments and some final stories and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of data in there, but it's very different data, and so it's very, very hard to compare the data that I have from 2017 from the data that I have today in 2020, because we are talking in 2017, those are monologue data. They are fully narrative. There are presentations which were intended to be public, and they were in Spanish. And in the data that I have for 2020, I have something that is completely different. I have much shorter answers. They are more dialogical in nature, the responses to direct questions, and they are about something which we are currently going through, and only that. So there is there's a sense in which these data are not really comparable, but what I've tried to do is, where possible, make some comparisons and try to find some sense in what's going on. Okay, and so let me know if you find it completely boggling, and but I'm hoping you won't. Okay. So here we go. We'll just get started with this. And how do you feel about remote learning? And what I'd like you to do is please go to www.menti.com And using the code 922963, I'd like you to go into that, and I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint, and then I will go into sharing the,
I'm sorry, can
There
you
we are.
please repeat the code?
Yeah, I'm just about to put
Okay,
that
okay.
up.
Thanks.
Okay, brilliant. So it is 922963. I'm imagining this is not your first time on menti.com, right? I'm hoping it's not. Okay, once you get into menti.com, this basically what I have
No.
in this questionnaire, all I want is keywords. What I want you to do is give me 3 words, at least 3 words, that could describe your experience of remote teaching and learning. Okay, so I think a lot of you are teachers and a lot of you are also learners. So just choose 3 words that for you reflect your experience. Good, good.
En el dedo de en medio la S. Luego en el dedo anular la I y luego en el dedo chico la C de casa.
Hi, whoever has their microphone open, could you please close it?
Sorry, guys, if I'm muting people. I just don't want to be rude, but it's necessary.
Thank you, Jose Luis. Okay, so I'm just about to close voting. I'll start a countdown for you. And there we go. So we're seeing all kinds of different ideas here, and challenging is a big one. Stress and stressful and stressing and frustrating and exhausting and hard on the eyes. But also, for example, and also lonely and also overwhelming, also anxiety, but also autonomous, also awareness, also questions of exciting, that you love it. Some people do really love this. Some people really don't want to go back. And I think that's very interesting. So we've got 10 seconds left until we close. Okay. Nice. Demanding, innovating, hesitation. Good. There's our vote has closed, and it's going to shift around for a while now. So thank you very much for participating on that. And now I'm just going to exit here, and I'm going to pop back into a new share, and my new share is to go back here. And the way in which I'm going to present this, as I've mentioned, I'm going to talk about stories, and I'm going to try to make sense of what's going on in terms of the people that we talk about then and the people we talk about now, the places we talked about then and the places we talk about now, and the experiences we talked about then and the experience we talk about now. Okay, and I will start out with people, of course. And so stories about people then, when in 2017, when we started to look into this topic, everyone can see you can see my PowerPoint at the moment, right? You can't.
Yes.
I did manage to change properly. Thank goodness.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm not very adept with Zoom. I'm much more of a Teams lady myself. But anyway, here we go. So as I was saying, I mean, the data that I picked up in 2017, that was all in Spanish. So, I mean, it is completely different. But here's a quote from Beto about people. And a very important category in terms of the people that we talked about then in 2017 were people who had some kind of influence over our career development. And in the case of Beto, for Beto, it was very important the role that his father played in his career development and in his choice of a career as an English language teacher. Obviously, again, sorry, just to reflect the same words that Nora said, these are not their real names. In none of the cases, okay? So here Beto's talking about the fact that his dad worked at Chrysler, he worked in General Motors, he worked in Bosch. Obviously this is Toluca, of course. And because he worked in so many international companies, he had a very good level of English. And so he started to speak to Beto in English. And he was quite advanced in that sense. He worked in bilingualism. And so for Beto, English was a part of his life from the very beginning. And so for him, then it was logical. A logical conclusion of that was that he would choose to be an English teacher. And he felt that his father was a very important influence. Obviously, parents are not the only influence. In the case of Camila, her children were a big influence in her choice of career because she had been married, she got divorced, and she ended up with the kids. And she was like, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to maintain children? And so she had to find a job. And what she decided was that she had a very, very good level of English. And so she went to the Faculty of Languages to take the degree in English language teaching, which is our open degree. And so there's parents and children as relatives. Other people who were very important, a lot of people shared stories about teachers who were very important in their choice of a career. And so for Daniela here, her teacher Elfego was central to her choice of profession as a language teacher, because when she went into class with Elfego, he gave the best class. And he had talked about his time when he'd been visiting England, he visited Canada, he showed them pictures, and she was very interested in all of this, and she thought, it seemed to her very glamorous, the idea of becoming an English language teacher and being able to travel all over the world. And so she wanted to go travel, to taste the tastes, to smell the smells, etc., etc. So then stories about people way back in 2017, which now seems so long ago. And even March this year seems quite long ago. Stories about people now are quite different. There are some about relatives, but they're also about the people who help in the home, and they're also about our students. So I want to look at some of those, and these are coming then from the data from 2020. So Karina in 2020 talked about her stories about people now. So she talked about her, this is a mix of talking about relatives and the person who hopes to help in the home. So Magdi, the woman who worked here at home helping with the housework, is not here anymore. And that has been the case for a lot of people. And my brother works out of the house all day. My mom had health problems in the recent past, so I feel she's not the one to go out nor do the heavy parts of the chores. Dad doesn't live here, and I have to take the groceries to his house. So you tell me, who's doing all the work in Karina's house? I'm thinking Karina and their helper. Then other stories about people now, and this is kind of where I'm going to touch a bit on similar ground to what Nora was talking about, also as far as students are concerned. And what I wanted to do here is contrast how Bill feels about his students and how Gerardo feels about the students. Bill says some of them quite clearly have the camera off, microphone off, and I often doubt they're even in front of the computer. On the other hand, then, we have Gerardo's view of this, and he says, I like that students are becoming more independent and are starting to own their learning. And so what I did was I made up a word cloud of the kind of words that my teachers were giving me, in the questionnaire. And what I have is a lot of empathy. But on the one hand, some people talking about doubt and other teachers talking about trust. And I'm hoping that Rosa is going to come up on the next. A lot of our teachers talk about the admiration that they have for their students, and that they're for their flexibility, for their adaptability, given these circumstances. Oh, I didn't have anything. So I'll just tell you very quickly. Rosa, for example, is one of the person who said that she deeply admires the students at the moment because she feels that they're responding really well to a situation, which is very difficult. And it was her who talked about feeling that she needed just to trust the students that they would be doing the work. There's a certain extent to which you can quite easily check whether they've been doing it or not. I just want to move on though into places. And so thinking about places then, the stories that we had about places back then, they were stories about our offices in the faculty. They were stories about our classrooms in the faculty. In the faculty, in the offices in the faculty, there was a real push, there was a real interest in personalizing your space through the use of different photos, through the use of images. Here I have French teacher, and she has an Eiffel Tower in the background. And I just want you to notice those really lovely big screen PC that none of us have at home, and we all had in our offices. And so it was just a completely different place entirely. And here's another faculty with another big PC in their office, and a physical agenda, a physical diary where we're writing things down, whereas today pretty much everything is online. If it's on your computer, if it's on your laptop, that's your office basically. Here she also has a printed up version of her thesis and a lovely pear with a big bite out of it. So what I want you to notice here is this, and there's lots of food around, isn't there? We didn't care about eating and working at the same time, whereas today, with our sanitary controls, I'm very careful about eating and working. I eat in one place and I work in another place completely different, and I make sure I've washed my hands before I touch the keyboard. It's something that we were much more relaxed about beforehand, and these things have completely changed. Down at the bottom, I have two photos of classrooms, and these are both classrooms in the Faculty of Languages. And again, what I want you to notice here is the uniformity of experience. What we have are the walls are the same color, the curtains are the same color, the desks are the same color, whereas our offices at home are very often mismatched. They're very different. You don't get to see an awful lot at the desk. There isn't really a space for a student to sit because they won't be coming to visit. And but in any case, so there's this uniformity that comes up that is kind of institutional, which is something that you don't have in your home space. And here just wanted to notice that back in 2017, when we were looking at teachers and their physical presence in the classroom, I have an English teacher who has, I think, 25 plus years experience, and he's sitting on his desk. He's a real presence, a real physical presence in the classroom, and he is expansive. He's taking up a lot of space. Is actually that sitting on the desk is actually quite aggressive. That was one of the things that we noticed about him. And then over here I have a French teacher who is hiding off to the side, who is kind of trying to blend in with her surroundings, to disappear, to camouflage herself, which we found was very interesting. This is a teacher who I think that was the second semester when she worked in the faculty. So these are the stories that we build up around places then in 2017. Another thing about the stories about places then, one of our participants, Edgar, compared his experience of becoming an English language teacher with El viaje a la semilla, which is a short story by an author called Alejo Carpentier, who I hope you know. And Edgar's from a small town. And then he came to the big city, came to Toluca to do his faculty training as a language teacher. And then he went back to that same school, small town. Now he works in various other places, but he went back to his hometown and he taught there. He taught in the secondary school where he'd studied. Now for him, that was el viaje a la semilla, el regreso a la semilla. And this beautiful circular notion of I was nothing when I was here before, but I triumphantly return as a fully trained professional and a highly respected teacher, for Edgar was extremely meaningful. And that, I'm sad to say, is something that is not going to be happening unless we do go back to physical classes. So that's the kind of story that I was interested in talking about, not having any continuation as such. What are our stories about places now? Our stories about places now have changed drastically, and our places now are our laptops and our headphones, and the gamier the better, right? And I think English teachers especially have a lot of these gamer headsets, and they're very heavy, and it's quite uncomfortable. And after about an hour and a half, my sad old little head gets kind of sore. So I might have to pop them off at some point. Another place where we're working now is the virtual environment that we set up in Zoom and in Teams. And it's that virtual space is very interesting. And the way in which we interact with people in that space and the way in which we use our own physical environment as a part of that space is for me fascinating. So it's one of those things that I really want to focus on. Instead of talking about classrooms and offices, we're talking about our bedrooms and our dining rooms. And a lot of our talk is about chairs and tables. A lot of what I'm hearing from my questionnaire is, I wish I had a better chair. I wish I had a bigger table. I wish I had another table, all of that kind of thing. Okay, so I think those are interesting. Bedroom office topic from Ariana says that my place for resting and my working space are the same. I have a desk and an office chair in a corner of my bedroom. I have a closet on the left, my bed on the right, and a bookshelf behind me. And you can feel from her words, you can feel the oppression. You can feel how cluttered she feels that space is. There's also a drawer chest and a vanity. It's comfortable, but it has become too tiring to spend most of the day in the same place. So I feel for Ariana with this one. Another topic that has arrived, another theme that arises in the data is this idea of negotiation. So Pedro says, there are 4 of us in the family, 3 teachers and 1 full-time student. So we've had to adapt home settings to create the best possible working conditions. My space is the dining room, where I've transformed the large table into my personal desk. It's well lit, comfortable and warm. And that's a thing that you'll hear a lot in Toluca, that in our data here in Toluca, because it is very cold at this time of year. And I have moved my office around in the house according to the time of year. I did originally work up here, but there are no curtains, so it's very cold at this time of year, and I had to move downstairs. But downstairs, there's no modem. And so the connection's really bad. So this idea of negotiating and moving around, and I'm very lucky, unlike Pedro, I'm the only full-time teacher in my house. So I don't have anyone to fight with for spaces. But Pedro won, because Pedro is the father, of course, of these 3, of the 3 teachers and 1 full-time student. He's the man. On the downside, he says, however, the family has not been using this place for meals, and we've moved meals to the kitchen. So there's always some sense of loss. There's always some sense of, I missed something. Something has changed and I needed it. Karina also talks about this idea of loss in her spaces, and she says that the space where she's working, which coincidentally is also their dining room, it's the space where my mom used to paint, and now she's not painting because she feels she gets in my way or something. When I finish classes, all the natural light is gone and it's too late for her, I think. My brother and I love puzzles, and we use this space too, and how I've ruined it, I think. So, you know, by using these spaces as offices, you ruin them for being your bedroom, you ruin them for being your dining room. Rosa also talked about, I don't know if this is, maybe, I'm hoping it's maybe the next one. Rosa talks about buying a mini whiteboard so it has the feeling that it's a classroom. But what she's actually using is a space in her small apartment, which is really very close to the kitchen. And Rosa also continuously complains about the fact that it's so close to the kitchen and it's so easy for her just to pop along and get a snack. And she feels that she's been eating far too much during this period of remote learning. There's a real tension between this personal and professional aspect of space. Gerardo, for example, says, I can't show my whole room because I don't want students seeing my personal space. Karina mentions that sometimes their house is very small, she says. Sometimes when someone's cooking, you can hear the blender and so on. That has happened to me in classes in the morning. You can hear the blender in the kitchen. But on the other side, for some teachers, this is a good thing. It's like some people really like that tension between the personal and the professional to be very clear, that separation very clear. And other people don't mind there being a bit of kind of give and take, kind of a look at the teacher as a more human person. So Armando says, seeing and listening to a part of my students' everyday life has been awesome. And I really enjoyed that. It's like, oh yeah, look what's happening. Another one of the participants says that it's really fun when you see brothers and sisters coming in to screen. My son actually had promised, he was listening to me this morning, and he had promised that he was going to pop in and stand behind me and say hello to everybody while I was talking about this. But unfortunately, he went off for a gaming session with his cousins. So what a shame he won't be here for this. Pedro talks about this as well in a more positive light, and he says he has an occasional visit from his dogs rushing into him and jumping onto his lap and interrupting the class for a brief moment. For him, in this way, this has helped the students to know the teacher a bit better on like the personal side of the teacher. Rosa also talks about it being very soothing to get to know students' pets, or to be able to show them your pets. I think perhaps you can probably hear occasionally in the background my dogs are very barky, and if someone walks by in the street, they will start to bark like crazy, but it hasn't been too bad today. Experiences, what have the experiences been, or what were the experiences then? So the stories about experiences then are stories of very hectic lives, of juggling many plates at the same time. Now, I couldn't find a good picture, I'm afraid, for this, but a lot of teachers, especially teachers who work in several different schools, talk about their car boot being their office, being full of books, rather than full of presents and Christmas trees, like it is in this case. But for many teachers, it was a case of driving quickly from one school to another, never having any time. Any time that you had on the weekend was all taken up by planning classes. And another aspect of time was, for example, not being able during the semester, not being able to take advantage of cheap holidays, for example, because you always had to be in class all the time. On the plus side, of course, in terms of time management, as teachers, we did have very, very clear timetables for working. And so it was pretty much a 9-to-5 job. And when you did your planning was like up to you. But you could very easily say if you were interested in going to the movies. So for example, if you wanted to go to the movies at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, you always knew you could. Whereas for other people who are maybe working as doctors or who are maybe working in industry, sometimes Friday at 8 o'clock was a really bad time. And so a lot of my teachers in 2017 talked about that as one of the big advantages of being an English language teacher. The stories about experiences now are quite different. So for example, one of the things that they say is there's no travel time. So you roll out of bed and you roll onto your chair. Oh, hopefully it's a nice office chair like that. And you basically get started working. So for some teachers, travel time wasn't really an issue. I quite enjoyed my travel time. I miss my travel time because it was a time when I got to listen to podcasts and audiobooks in my car. But for a lot of people, the travel time was over 2 hours. And so that was very complicated. Armando, was very clear about that. He enjoyed not having to travel any longer. And that is one of the upsides. Now, I'm going to go back into Menti again, and I want to ask you, this is a question that I asked my teachers, and I want to find out, how has your workload changed? I want you to go into www.menti.com and use the code 98, 23, 16, 8. And now just give me a chance to pop back into that. And because I don't want to be there, that's the same one as before. I want to go into this one. Now, the question here is, while teaching, learning English from home, has your workload increased considerably, increased slightly, stayed the same, decreased slightly, or decreased considerably? In just a few seconds, I think I'll probably get started with the countdown just to try to motivate you into joining in as much as possible. I like the background for this one because it kind of conveys the concept of remoteness. Standing on that mountain, I kind of wish I could. Okay, so I'm just going to start the countdown on that, and so I can see a lot of you are saying increase considerably. Some of you are saying increase slightly. Very interesting that some of you are saying stayed the same. Some of you are saying decrease considerably. I see that most of our voters, a huge majority, are saying increase considerably. Okay, it's just about to close. 1 second left. There, the voting's closed. Okay, so I got in 40 votes, which is not bad from 80 participants. Kind of bears out what Bill said, that a lot of people go online and then don't bother to join in. But here we are. Now, that is very similar to the results. The results that I got from the teachers, the English teachers in the Faculty of Languages in Toluca, were all either increased considerably or increased slightly. Nobody said stayed the same, decreased slightly, or decreased considerably. And I'll talk a bit in just a second about what that was for, because a follow-up question here was this next one: which factors have contributed most to any increase in workload? And here again, the voting is open. So go ahead and vote. Was it demands from family, demands from friends, demands from household chores, demands from school administrators, or demands from students and teachers? What I'm doing here is I asked the teachers that I talked to, I was asking about demands from students, but because I know that some of you are not teachers at the moment, I'm hoping that perhaps this will make you feel that this is taken into consideration. Good, so I can see here, good push up there. And there's 25 votes in, so I'll just start the countdown now. The minute left on voting. You can vote, actually, you can vote for more than one, so go ahead. Don't be shy. So just to talk a bit about this, as we can see, an enormous majority of you are saying that these demands come directly from students or from teachers. And I have a few quotations from my participants that will bear that out. Demands from household chores. It was very surprising because a lot of us thought that maybe losing our commute time would mean that we had like kind of a more relaxed day. And I kind of think that in the first semester, we did have a more relaxed day, but in the second semester, I definitely feel that that has not been the case at all. Demands from household chores have been impressive. I just really wouldn't have expected it myself. But the fact are that you don't just have to go to the supermarket anymore. When you get home, you also have to disinfect everything you bought. So, right. So good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts here. And what I want to do is, I'll go Sorry, I messed that one up. I'll try that again. Okay, so here we are. And demands on time, and as Bill said, demands on time have skyrocketed, have increased impressively for all of my participants. And what you can see here, these are the responses that they gave in the Microsoft form. While teaching English from home has your workload, 5 of them say increase considerably, 4 of them say increase slightly. So only 9 participants there. And which of the following factors have contributed to your change in workload? We have the demands from household chores, demands from school administrators, and demands from students. That was like pretty much across the board how they felt about that. Rosa says, which I feel is something that I hope is going to resonate with a lot of us. She says, I feel students want more feedback on every single aspect. They tend to believe that if you don't make the slightest comment on their work, you're not really checking the loads of homework you ask for. And that makes me feel anxious. And that loads, and it's something that the students say a lot. They say that, oh, the teacher's leaving lots more homework than they did. But perhaps what they're not seeing is that you're not teaching the same amount of contact hours. So if you, for example, a lot of us who have maybe 4 hours of contact a week are only doing 1 hour of video conferencing, and the other 3 hours are filled up with these loads of homework that the students are doing. Karina, again, Karina is very hard on herself, so she says, I work almost all the time. As I try to relieve students' pressure, I receive homework every day, old homework too. And as we all know, on those online platforms, it's hard enough to keep up with the homework that the kids are handing in on time, but then going back in and seeing if someone handed in a homework that was late just is the triple time. She uses WhatsApp too, so she receives messages and questions all day long. And that's pretty typical, I think, of our teaching experience at the moment. Technology has been interesting because it has created certain freedoms, but it also has imposed certain constraints on us, okay? For as far as freedom is concerned, so many of this is a mishmash actually of Bill and I think Gerardo, who said, I learned to use lots of marvelous tools. And so all of those things that you already know about, things that you're using, the web whiteboard, the Padlets, Menti, Google Classroom, Kahoot, Genially, Teams, Zoom, quizzes, and all of those things that you're continuously learning how to do and continuously reminding yourself to include into your classes. It just gets so complicated. But there's a lot of freedom there in the sense that, and one of the things that Bill says is that he's hoping that when we get back to work in the faculty, he's hoping that our Wi-Fi in the faculty will be better so he can continue to use this kind of technology because he has found it very liberating in a sense. And he also goes on to say that, for example, in the faculty, YouTube is one of the blocked apps, and YouTube is one of the things that they use most as teachers. So that was a bit of a shame. So this idea then of freedom and also constraints. But another level of constraints is the problems that arise because the students don't have access to a high-speed internet connection. Rosa says in this sense, she says, I plan activities and they don't turn out the way I intended due to external factors such as slow internet connection, or students who don't have access to a computer or even a quiet space to take these online sessions. Just this week, I was working on my English semantics group. We were looking at troponyms of laughter, and I was asking them to cackle. And so they were like, no, but we can't cackle because everyone will hear me. One of my students said, no, I can't cackle because I'm in my family restaurant and I can't leave, and so, but I can't make that kind of noise. Another student said, no, but my mom is working on the computer beside me, so I'm not allowed to make that much noise. So there's so many problems going on, you know. Pedro also mentions that when students are suddenly logged out or have problems with communication, it's one of the most difficult parts to deal with for him. So that is just to conclude here. Thank you very much for bearing with me during this time. Thank you very much. Big thank you to my teachers who responded to the questionnaire. And I have a couple of questions just to kind of motivate you to join in. Do these stories resonate with you? Who of the people that I've been talking about do you identify with most? Do you miss your 2017 identity? Or are you happy now with your 2020 identity? And then on another level, I have a pair of questions which are related to the use of narrative inquiry about a topic which is so immediate, something that is happening right now. And for me, my doubts here, I have many, many doubts, is the current experience too raw, too immediate, too current to have generated good stories yet? Because very often the best stories that we have are the stories that we've told again and again and again. So when Daniela was talking about her teacher, Elfego, she's told that story 20 times, you know, and it just gets better and better. It just gets more and more mature as it goes along. And these are, to a certain extent, this is so fresh and so hurtful and so grievous and so shocking that it is possible that we don't really have quite a hold on our stories yet. And so I'm wondering, is narrative inquiry really the correct way to go about this? Think about narrative inquiry. Stories often, like I said, in 2017 symposium, there was a lot of monologue going on, but can they be a stepping stone towards dialogue, a stepping stone towards mutual understanding and mutual growth? And I'm just going to show you my references, and then I'm just going to give you a sneaky peek of some really cute memes that I found. And I want to close as well with a couple of pieces of advice. Form alliances, especially with your students. Don't be too hard on yourself. Find ways to support your students and find ways to support yourself. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my question slide, and I'll open for questions, I suppose. So that's me. And so are there any questions? Lots and lots. And I can't see the chat.
I would just like to thank you. I would like to thank you first off for the presentation. It's really good. And actually, I never used the Menti app. So that's like, that's new material I could probably use in my online classes as well. And yes, I have, like, as you were speaking, I have like mixed emotions with every single subject that's said. It's like, yeah, I feel what they're saying, but I also agree with this person, you know? So it's kind of like love-hate kind of relationship, I suppose. And so I can't really tell if I identify with somebody most. And then regarding your third,
I'm sorry, can I just interrupt you really quickly there, and then I'll let you continue, Brenda, because yes. I think that, as Nora said, it is a roller coaster. And, you know, these people are, I'm only showing a few quotes from them. And so their whole stories are kind of, they're like, yes, this is brilliant, but, and then, oh, it's terrible, but. So they're also up and down. So they're not, you know, they're not kind of one dimensional. But yeah, thank you, Brenda. I get that point, but yeah, go ahead then, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And then if this experience, I mean, this whole study, no, it's not too soon for you to be exposing it, because I think we all know we're going through this, but it just comforts you when you actually hear the experience. It even happens with my classmates, like in class, how was your week? Oh, it was heavy, I had this, you know. It's like, it comforts you. Everybody can speak their thoughts. So no, it is not too soon. I think it's, you know, the sooner we target this kind of situations, I think the better. So yeah, I like the whole presentation, and I'm hoping you can give us like a link or something, because some of the stuff you said are like really good material to include in one of my essays I'm planning on. So please, if you can share it.
Okay,
That
yeah.
would be
I'm also
appreciated.
hoping to publish it at some point myself, but you know, and then I'm like, you know, I'm gonna write this up, and then someone somewhere is gonna say, but it wasn't rigorous enough, and I'm like, yeah, it wasn't rigorous enough. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
I learned so much. I learned so much from just talking to people about the experience, and like you say, Brenda, just sharing with other people this traumatic experience that we're going through, this experience of enormous loss, of real difficulty, and yeah, so thank you very much for animándome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so any other questions, comments?
I believe we have some questions in the chat.
Okay, Jose Luis, you want me to read those out?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll get started from dum-de-dum. Yeah, yes, Christina says that decrease considerably may mean that they have lost their job. Not in, okay, yeah, not in my case, and that because I was only talking to people who were in work, but I think you're quite right that that's true. Love the app. Good. Menti is a really fun app to use. Nice comparison. It is nice to compare what happened then with what's happening now, but I mean, there is a sense in which it's just not necessarily correct to do so. And it's so different to what's gone before. In the north of Veracruz State at Technological University of Gutierrez Zamora, these situations are quite similar. It's very interesting to see how many teachers try to make the best using as many resources as possible. And I found that, I have found that very exciting, that that people are really, really trying to make this a great experience for students. In our case, and in my case, I work in the faculty, of course. For me, it's really important to keep that experience of taking classes going on for my students. For me, it's very, very important for them to keep some semblance of normality, some semblance of having to get up in the morning to take a class. I think that helps a lot, even if you're going through so many other things in your home life. Jessica, how much of an effect do you think these circumstances will have on teacher identity in the long term? It's a broad question, I know, yes, but I actually did ask about them, how they felt that it would change their experience when they go back into teaching in the faculty. I asked them how long they thought it would take, and they're very optimistic. They think they'll be back teaching in about between 6 months and a year. I take a deep breath there. I really don't know. And they do say that they feel that they will be using much more technology on the one hand because they think it's fun for the students and it helped them to engage students much more in what's going on in the classroom. And they talk about a broad range of speaking activities and that kind of thing. One of the very interesting topics that we had was that one teacher set up a speaking class in Zoom at 7 a.m. in the morning, and she assumed that there would be no one there. And then, oh, surprise, when she started her Zoom class on that first day, and all of the students were there, and they're always there, and they're always participating. And she feels that that's a show that students really need this contact with some kind of intellectual stimulation during this time, and for her that's very important. So yes, I do think that there will be a huge impact on what we do when we go back in. Thank you for that question, Jessica. Angelis, just a comment, I think that having an optimal space to work is something that we should pay attention to. For example, some of us have to find places if those were our offices, yet those places are often uncomfortable. And that's very true. It's quite hard to find the perfect place, but we can find a place and improve it, maybe adding a cactus, adding stickers, or something that will make it more our own. I think that is so true. Very often, however, a lot of the teachers complained that what they had behind them was a very cluttered wall, or they had clutter in their space. People are very often using what was their cuartito de tiliches, we call it here in the state of Mexico. I'm sure you don't use such a a casual phrase in Guanajuato, you're all pretty fancy, but everyone has the room where you put all your trash, right? All your workout equipment and all of that, and maybe your overflow, your back stock from the kitchen, stuff that you've bought in Costco and that. And that ends up being the place where a lot of us are working. And so this in Zoom, I don't know if you can do it, but in Teams, you can create a virtual background for yourself. It's not always very good if there's too many teliches behind you, but that is kind of, for me, that's interesting, because what you're doing is you're blocking that personal space, and you're making sure that it doesn't intrude into your professional life. Anadel, I feel identified with different stories you share. I often feel well, I'm in a video class with them, but loaded with work at the end. I sometimes feel tired of being in the same place every day, but most of the time I feel I'm learning a lot. And I get that too, Anadel. Yeah, I really enjoy my video classes. But then at the end, it's like, it's so much suffering with like downloading the video and then hanging it onto the website, and it's just so much to do.
I know, right? Yeah.
and then leaving the homework, and then I messed up this week so badly, and I had a homework. I have 3 groups, and for 2 of the groups I put the homework up on time, but for the 3rd group I didn't, and I put it up like very last minute, and I had to give them an extra 2 days to hand in the homework. I was so embarrassed, but and that's kind of been my experience a lot. It's been very embarrassing and very frustrating. Jose Luis says, I think that for the most they're mixed emotions. Good, yeah, clear. On the one hand, it gives us the opportunity to use tools that we cannot use in person, but also the frustration and the technical limitations of our students. And like a lot of my teachers, again, one of my teachers said very clearly, said that what had increased considerably the demands on their time was not only having to learn to use the technology, him or herself, but also to teach students how to use it. And I think that that's something we're not taking into consideration enough, is that if you want your students to work well with the technology, you do have to take the time in the first sessions, or in any session where you start with a new technology, you have to say, look, this is how this works. This is how you're going to share your screen. This is how you're going to make a presentation. This is how you're going to upload homeworks. And a lot of what I did at the start of semester, at least for the first couple of weeks, was making sure that my students knew how to use Teams as well as I did. And I know that that's terrible, and that you're like, oh, that's not my job, but it is, unfortunately. As a student, Veronica Lopez says,
be the bearer
sorry.
of bad news here, but
no, brilliant. No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, I want to remind everyone to go back to the link and register yourselves again, because the last link didn't contain the email. So now you can add your email and register yourselves. And thank you, doctor. Now, la División de Ciencias Sociales y Humanidades proudly grants a constancia to Dr. Pauline Marion Dorothy Moore. And
thank you.
Let me share that. Okay.
Oh, lovely. No, that's for Nora.
There you go.
Oh, I estoy. Okay,
yes.
Very good. Yes, okay. Thank you very much.
La División de Ciencias Sociales y Humanidades, Campus Guanajuato, otorga la presente constancia a Pauline Marion Dorothy Moore, Universidad Autónoma de Estado de México, por haber presentado la ponencia plenaria What Does It Mean to Be an ELT Professional Today? En el marco del 26º Seminario Transdisciplinario de la Lengua, impartida el 30 de octubre del 2020, Dr. Miguel Ángel Hernández Fuentes, director de la División de Ciencias Sociales y Humanidades, Campus Guanajuato.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, this academic community gives special thanks to Dr. Nora and Dr. Pauline for their time and their desire to share their valuable knowledge with us. Before we end this presentation and this seminar, I want to invite this wonderful audience to open your microphones and give a round of applause to the presenters. Let's make it real, guys. Such a kind audience. Well, this is the end of this seminar. We appreciate your assistance. Please be safe and have a marvelous evening.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody,
you.
for being
Thank
here.
you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Don't
you.
forget
Thank
to
you for
visit
organizing.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.